Aristotle says this. He says, virtue or the good, right? That's what we mean by virtue. Then being of two kinds, intellectual and moral. Intellectual virtue in the main owes both its birth and its growth to teaching, for which reason it requires experience and time, while moral virtue comes about as a result of habit, whence also its name. Etiquette is one that is formed by a slight variation from the word ethos or habit. And so let's unpack this a bit, right? So you've got these two virtues. You've got intellectual virtue and you've got moral virtue. And where does intellectual virtue come from? Well, it comes from teaching. So specifically your parents, your coaches, and all the teachers that you've had through the years who have schooled you in the appropriate ways to act, right? And remember, intellectual virtue takes time. It requires experience. Wisdom is not immediate. It just like skill in any practice takes a long time to develop. And so intellectual virtue, which again owes its birth and its growth to teaching, is very time consuming. Growth cannot be forced. All right, and then you've got this second kind of virtue, which is also super fascinating, this moral virtue. And moral virtue comes about from habit. So, what is habit? It's our everyday, mundane, ordinary activities. So we could, if we were to kind of take a bird's eye view of what you were doing, you get up, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, all these things, you eat breakfast. And it's not just that you do these things, but there's a particular way that you do them, which is unlike anybody else. And these are our habits. And for the Greeks, and this is very interesting. I mean, like morality is not what you say, it's what you do, right? Like our habits are ordinary, repetitive, mundane, everyday actions. That's where we can find our morality, right? That's where character lies. And that's where this concept of ethics comes from, or ethos. It's a habit. So what Aristotle discusses here is the notion of virtue as a kind of functional appropriateness. Virtue is the functional good. That is, if it does what it's supposed to, it's virtuous. So he says this, we must, however, not only describe virtue as a state of character, but also say what sort of state it is. We may remark then that every virtue or excellence both brings into good condition the thing of which it is the excellence and makes the work of that thing be done well. For example, the excellence of the eye makes both the eye and its work good, for it is by the excellence of the eye that we see well. Similarly, the excellence of the horse makes a horse both good in itself and good at running and at carrying its rider and awaiting the attack of the enemy. Therefore, if this is true in every case, the virtue of man also will be the state of character which makes a man good and which makes him do his work well. And so, I mean, there's a kind of pragmatism in there, which means, if we want to know if you are eating a healthy diet, we just look at your body, right? And see what it's doing for you. If you want to know if your study habits are any good, we can see if it's producing the results that you want. And I think, that's the kind of same thing in public performance. That is, virtue of skill in public performance has to do with whether or not it's a well-received speech by the audience, right? Is it a functional good?